All right, here's problem 8.6.53t. So this one's a proportion, but it's a proportion with a finite population, meaning the population is relatively small relative to the sample size. So we're going to do it just like the other proportions, except that we're going to have to calculate in a finite population correction factor, and I'll show you how to calculate that. So as always, we start with the information we know, which is that our population, sometimes called the big N, is 3,500. And then our sample, which is the little n, is 500. And our x, the number of successes in the sample, are 220. And our confidence level is 0.95. So that's everything we know. And then to figure out some other things, we're going to need to calculate our alpha, which is just equal to 1 minus our confidence level. And we're also going to need to figure out our p, which is our proportion of successes in the sample. So that's just going to be x divided by n. And I think that's it. That's all we really know at this stage. So we're going to have to calculate our standard error of the proportion. And our standard error of the proportion is equal to the square root of p times 1 minus p over n. That's our standard error of the proportion. And it's an approximate in this case because we don't have, we don't know the population proportion. So instead we're using the sample proportion, but it's good enough for our needs. And then we're also going to need our critical Z. And remember, the critical Z is the Z score of the alpha divided by 2, because it's two-tailed test. And then it's the absolute value of that. So I'm going to say absolute value of norm.s.inv for a probability of alpha divided by 2. There's my critical Z score. And then, like I mentioned at the beginning, we need to figure out our finite population correction factor, or this factor that lets us account for the fact that we have such a large sample relative to our population size. And so the formula for the finite population correction factor is the square root of population, so big N, minus the sample, little n, divided by big N minus 1. That's our finite population correction factor. So our margin of error is just our standard error of the proportion times our critical Z times our finite population correction factor. All right, so our lower confidence limit and our upper confidence limit are just going to be our P bar actually. That's what that is, minus our margin of error and our P bar plus our margin of error. I think this thing wants us to be decimals. So we're going to have 0.4 to 0.48. So what that means is we are 95% confident that between 40 and 48% of fans are buying food at the concession stand. And that's it for that one.